Going live.
Okay. Hello and welcome to thewisdomfactory.net. A little change in our name. I'm Mark Davenport, and as usual, I'm here with
Hi.
Heidi. All right. Her line. That's right.
Mhm.
Okay. And tonight we are having one of our occasional assemblies with
Conversations that matter is this.
yes, it is.
Between the
Yeah,
series.
we have a series starting up in November. We're not quite there yet. That will be called conscious
Aging, probably.
aging, probably.
Mhm.
You bet.
In the meantime, we do thoughts like this
Yep.
today, and also more regularly Women Matters,
Mhm.
where only women talk together and try to find out how to create a better world.
Yeah, but I listen in from the other side of the room, so no secrets from me. Okay.
Okay, the Wisdom Factory is a forum for people to connect people who have wisdom, experience, and knowledge
Yes.
to share with the world.
Uh-huh.
And today we have one of our most faithful followers. This is Henrik Wredmark from Sweden, and he has read a book which is called something like Integral Sexuality. And we were very curious about it, but not having the time to read the whole thing, we thought we ask him to come in and share with us what is written in the book, and we might discuss it. And if you want to join in, it's very welcome. Leave your comments now on YouTube, on our live stream page, and afterwards on YouTube and on our live stream page.
Yeah,
Okay.
join in. Well, maybe Henrik would like to join in too.
Yeah, and we ask him to present himself.
Yes, we
Okay.
do. Yeah. Tell us all about you, Henrik.
Hello there. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, I'm a social worker, and I have an interest in integral theory, and that's how I came across this book about integral sexology and transpersonal sexology by Tara Long.
Henrik, just a question. Do you have your camera on?
Yeah.
It's strange. It doesn't show up.
We don't see it.
I can see myself.
You can see yourself. We cannot see you.
He's white boxed.
Yeah, let's say
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Here we see him, but here we don't see him. This is very strange.
Yeah.
So maybe it doesn't come over. So you have to talk louder than you have only your voice. I will check it out and see if you come over. Okay, begin. You are a social worker and you live in Stockholm in Sweden.
Yeah. And I have an interest in integral theory as you guys, and I came across this. I'm interested in different fields of integral theory, and I came across this integral sexology by Tara Long. So,
well, that's one of the things that has been really nice about knowing you, because you take integral to many different areas. You have an interest in several things, and well, who doesn't have an interest in sex and sexology? So, it's a natural extension. And we don't know really anything about the book, so perhaps you'd like to tell us. It's an anthology, I understand, of several different authors who are experts. I would like to say sexperts, but anyway, just introduce us into the book a little bit, and then why you want to talk about it. What's about the book that's so compelling?
Before you begin, you are still not live on camera. If you can go to the settings up there and try to handle it a little bit.
Where do I manage settings?
On the cell phone, I don't know, but it's in a wheel near where you.
Do you see me now, or
no?
It's a picture.
Do you see me now?
Picture. I see the picture at least, and this is already, but not you as the person.
Not live. No.
Not live?
No.
wait.
You were earlier before we
I
went.
were earlier.
Yeah.
No, not
How
on.
come is a difference?
Yeah.
Wait, I tried to do something here.
In the meantime, we can talk a little bit
Sure.
about sexuality, and what we find is that it is still.
Is there a difference now?
No.
No change.
No.
Better or worse?
It's the same.
It's the same, yeah.
The same?
Yeah.
Hmm.
We see a black.
And now?
No,
Black screen.
we see a
Black screen? And now?
Same.
So you have people see your profile picture, and it's okay.
That's all right.
Better than nothing. And we see hear your voice, and it's all right.
Yeah. Right. And
we were talking about taboo.
Taboo, exactly.
Sexuality. We have sexualized society, but still really talking about it in a different manner. So I would be interested how they talk about it, how they introduce it, and how it's integrated in integral terms, let's say.
Well, it's various essays, and they span from integral to transpersonal psychology, and they have sexological subjects written by academics and expert practitioners and therapists. And they span through subjects like holistic sexuality and tantric orgasm, sexual drive versus sexual mindfulness, tantric yoga, tantric massage therapy, sex surrogacy, polyamory, sacred prostitution, and sexual shamanism, among many topics.
Do you have some? Do you have some favorite chapters?
Yes, there was a very interesting chapter about the brain and the development, the female and the male brain, how different hormones come into play during different developmental stages in life, from childhood to late in life. Like pre-adolescence, adolescence, young adult, and parents, and old age, and so on. And there were different topics there, and about the brain, and I could see connections, like some hormones in the female brain that are good stress regulators, which male brain doesn't have in that extent. So that can explain some aggressive and sexual behavior from the male part in how to deal with
I have no idea what you're talking about. No idea.
No, but for me it makes sense. The experience is, at least as far as I experience it with the men I had, our approach to sexuality is quite different. So
yeah.
And
let him talk.
Yeah.
And some other things that was very interesting was how they spoke about the fear of there are three big fears that usually the overall theme in the book is like sexuality viewed in a new way. It goes. I have some notes here to help me along.
Yeah, and we should say to the viewers, unfortunately, the camera of Henrik doesn't work, so you just have to listen.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Yeah, they were speaking about they were introducing the clinical sexological field, and that has gone through 3 phases, like the mechanical paradigm associated with all sexual dysfunction and local changes in the genitalia. And then it was the encyclopedic paradigm, follows the multidisciplinary methodological approach. And now there is a systemic paradigm, tries to integrate all aspects of sexuality. And this book probes a wider understanding of sexuality, like sexuality is energy, and how it connects clinical sexuology with the tantric traditions and the Eastern traditions. So
let me say to the viewers, this book you can click on underneath of our live streaming page, thewisdomfactory.net/live-streaming. You find it right under the video window where we are live now. There is the link to the book. You can buy it on Amazon. So you know then what Henrik is talking about.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how energy gets stuck and how energy gets trapped, and usually gets trapped by fear. And they speak about 3 big fears humankind usually have when it comes to intimacy and sexuality. And one is fear of love, when human beings are very small and they have a strong longing for love, but they're not received, and then they give up on their love, and that longing gets trapped, and they maybe think something is wrong with their longing of love. So that can extreme cases make some people become terrorists.
Explanation.
Yeah.
And then there is fear of sex, when sex is usually it's follows by 3 reasons. One is being worthy of love. So when you mix sex with the validation of being worthy of love, then it gets all mixed up, and offers the illusion of 2 people connecting, at least momentarily. And then there's also fear of death, and that's the reason sex can be a vehicle for procreation, and then you don't get so scared of death if you have procreation.
So you continue, life continues then.
Yeah. So and also fear of intimacy. So, but all these fears, they usually trap energy, sort of, and the whole, and then they go into all these experts who are from tantric traditions to sex therapists, and a new concept for me that I didn't know existed, quite unconventional. They talk about sex surrogacy partnership.
What does that mean?
That's when a therapist takes the place of a sex partner, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yeah, but they differentiate between a clinical sex therapist who uses touch in some of these ways you mentioned, and sex surrogacy partners who who they differentiate from prostitution, because when it comes to prostitution, it's all about the non-spiritual part of the body, so to say. But the sexual surrogacy partnership is like releasing sexual energy and spirit in someone else's being, and if there's energy trapped in that being, so they can't be them full of themselves. And well, that was a new concept.
Oh,
yeah, this is very interesting. I heard about that already. And what I'm wondering, if this therapist is doing that, you know, it is somehow disconnected from the relationship then. Because normally, we, as you said before, we in some way connect sexuality with relationship and even with love. Although I have heard that for men it's not always the case.
what?
Well, women at least tendenциally connect sexuality with love.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did they say something about that? How it is done? Let's say how it is the setup. How it is understood.
Well, they say what they do is that they differentiate from prostitution and this non-spiritual view of the body, and like just the body is just a thing, but the whole theme in that comes back over and over again in the book is like the body as a, you know, the body of the flesh, or they use the eye of the flesh. They use the non-dual tantric tradition of like being one with the body and not captured by desire and the body, but, you know, experiencing energy and body in the full field, and experiencing another's full field. But I guess what these sex therapists and maybe they talk about sacred prostitution as well in the ancient days, and I think they use the vehicle of emptiness, like they're totally emptying themselves of, so like to be of service.
Can I ask a question? Is it?
That's how I understand it.
I hear prostitution is normally that a woman is a prostitute. Normally.
Yes.
No, is it there too, or is it something even for women there? That the men would do the sacred prostitution?
Historically, it was in the ancient times. The scriptures tells it was only women being sacred prostitutes for males in Eastern traditions. But maybe when it comes to sex surrogacy, that is not just women doing sex surrogacy. It was also men doing sex surrogacy. And especially when it comes to sex therapists doing that. I do have some, because when it comes to this clinical sexologist and sex therapist, that chapter, I do have some, it was about, releasing the energy when there's some personal history of being abused or whatever, and they use touch to, they have a long chapter of touch and different aspects of touch, how that can be healing, but also damaging if you're not very careful and concerned
Mm-hmm.
in what and aware of what you're doing. But they have a very elaborate understanding of touch in that respect. But I do have some concerns when it comes to ethical standards and the training of the sex therapist and how they, you know, sort of make sure that they're not doing further damage, or there's another abuse of that client.
Mm-hmm.
Like a regular psychotherapist, because this sex therapist, he was a psychotherapist and he switched to clinical sexuality and sex therapy. But he also talked like talk therapy will only take some people a certain distance. The rest is more difficult. So that's why he went into this practical field of clinical psychology and sex therapy, where you use touch to strengthen the client. But I do have some concerns, like how they don't use their own shadow, how it comes out in a nasty way of the client, abusing the client. And in regular therapy, there's a long tradition of, you know, try to make certain you have a advisor or you have a supervisor, and you go and talk to them, how do I do in this and this, you're back checking all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And also that's the thing with the training, you're back checking, or am I doing this in a fashion that is considerate and compassionate and thoughtful and ethical, and, you know, in all regards. But this is maybe a very new field, and it's you know, it is on the margins.
Yeah.
And so they haven't, there's further research, further practice, and further understanding needed of all these aspects and fields.
Yeah, we talk about integral sexuality. I would assume when people grow up and really work with their shadow, that would be a prerequisite for doing this sort of work. I'm thinking about
Definitely.
the abuse of spiritual gurus, which they did in the past, with saying they are just liberating.
Yeah.
So it's a very
I can definitely see some typical how do you say, traps here, or blind spots, if you're not very careful, both in the training but also how it's practiced. Like the therapist is self-deceiving himself or herself, or
Mm-hmm.
you know. And but I do raise some hope for like the potential.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can see why talk therapy will not take all clients all the way.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
But I just thought in Germany, after having been very much abused by gynecologists, they now have the obligation, when they do the how do you say, the examination, they have to have somebody else in the room. So you cannot do it anymore alone. And I had, when I was a child, I had a situation like this, and it was no fun. So I could imagine that this sort of therapy could be in a, almost like in a, I don't want to say in a group situation, but at least in a surveyed situation, that there is always somebody there who is observing also the therapist, and to find out, you know, as you say, supervision in act would be for the protection of the client. You know?
Yeah. But a further thing that was I was caught my concern was like, so this is transpersonal psychology, and they use the word integral, but it's not used in the same way as integral theory by Ken Wilber, and with all the levels and lines and the states. So, and not the quadrant as either. So that is a further concern that they use. This book is published by that I think the California Institute. In some of the scholars and academic people are from that university in California, supported by Integral Life, I guess. But anyway,
Ken Wilber's organization.
Yeah.
I don't think he would associate himself with a teaching situation that didn't really get into integral in the full sense of the word.
But as you said, it is not considering these things.
Yeah.
Because I thought we would also talk about what in our vision integral sexuality would be, as our theory or practice of integral sexuality.
Sure.
And how that would be interesting for me, but it is your show, so you go on.
But what they do is that they talk a lot about the states, like, you know, the gross state, but they don't use those terms, but they use the old Eastern traditions, and they use a tantric, like the non-dual state, and how they, you know, connecting body, mind, connecting the chakras, or connecting body, mind, and heart and gut. So they talk a lot about that, but they don't use like the levels or the stages. Like, you have different consciousness, and you can, and they don't talk about shadow. So if you could combine integral psychotherapy with integral sexuality or then you would get like a full understanding of the psychological domain and a sexological domain too. Because I think I'm very concerned these days, like there's been a historical problem with the men and women, with the men usually as the perpetrators and women as victims, or children as victims. And there are some women perpetrators, but statistically that's not the majority. But
for that to happen to me,
but we have a big problem with the historical traditions.
Sure.
That has put all sexuality and put sexual understanding, which is this book talks a lot about the traditions, how that puts a lid on sexual understanding. The Judeo-Christian traditions and many other religious traditions. So it's more difficult to really get into contact with that sexual energy and have a healthy response to it and understanding to it. So they talk about shamanism and paganism and cultures like that have more easily access to the body and sexual energy than the Judeo-Christian tradition or the Eastern tradition, where it's all mind and transcend, but not so much the body and flesh. So I think it's a very interesting union here, and I think that would help both men and women explore a more healthy sexuality and develop that sexual intelligence line.
Oh my. You know, in personal development, we go through so many stages, you know, and sexuality is different at each of those stages. And you can get frozen at almost any of those stages.
Yeah.
You know, and somehow what sex was like when I was 20 is supposed to be like what it was going to be like the rest of my life, you know.
Yeah.
You think so, you know, and then it doesn't. It changes, and that can be a terrible crisis in
I know, and who have a
Sure.
terrible crisis because they think they have to function like they did when they were 20.
Right.
You know?
Uh-huh.
So, and when you see that as a pathology, then you have a problem, you know. But when you embrace it, and as we know, in integral, we develop and embrace the stage before, but we accept where we are now. So they would just accept it as a normal developmental stage. And what I saw in experience with men, that they are so fearful, you know, of not getting their thing anymore, so that actually doesn't work anymore because of their fear.
Exactly.
And we were talking about the fears before, so I think it is really, really, really important to look into that.
Yep, and men normally have no idea that it's normal that those changes happen. They've heard stories, but they can't imagine it happening to them because when they're young, the virility is so strong and so muscular that it's like, I'm not ever going to get really old. You know?
Yeah, and this is connected with getting older and this change in sexuality, that it is nothing, that is not worth. You know, because it's all this young cult and this is normal, and whatever comes later, it is sort of denigrated. And so what happens is that it really goes away, you know, because it's so overloaded with expectations, so that there is no natural curiosity. You were mentioning before, no, that we need to see and go into it and feel it and explore it. And mindful, you named mindful sexuality.
Yeah, they talk about in some places in the book. They talk about you can do it couple wise, like, or you can do it single wise. So you can have exercise with mindfulness and meditation, tantric exploration of your own sexual being. But also they have a couple exercises where a couple can do that, exploring the sexual energy together in intimacy. And that is, I think, our tradition, the Judeo-Christian tradition, have a very taboo on sexuality, and then sexuality gets all in the shadow, and that shadow rears its ugly head in all kinds of places.
Yes, it does. You know, I want to put one plug in for that Judeo-Christian tradition, though, and it also happens in other traditions too, but this is the one we know, and this it was a reaction to the earlier traditions that was basically red gangsterism, you know, where
rape
was normal, you know, and women were property, you know, and these were attempts to control that primitive energy and channel it into something constructive for both the individual development and for society's benefit.
So it had to
yeah,
be
that's true, but they bird too much knowledge of that. That they bird too much of carnal wisdom, carnal knowledge, and carnal energy. With that, you know, rigorous control. It was all blue. And all the magenta and all the if you talk development, we hear you. All that was lost. And for example, we up here in the north, we have paganism. In the Stone Age era. So, you know, with all these rites de passage and stuff like that. But anyway, nowadays in the modern times, it's like all exterior body, like it's science with this mechanical view of the body. And it's pornography. and in between there's some psychology, and a lot of people, I guess, have a hard time fitting it all together.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and also all the taboo of speaking about sexuality in a healthy way,
Yeah.
and not as a mechanical thing like the how do we do this, did it work for you, or no, the genitalia is not working, this and that, but how it's much more, they talk about, let's see if I can find it here. You can have they talk about orgasm. If you have a relational view of orgasm and exploring intimacy, or if you have a goal oriented with orgasm view, like it's all about getting to the goal. And and usually in talk shows and TV, or where you have sex experts there, or they talk, or sex education in school, they all talk about very much the specific desires, or they talk about how the mechanical, how you can do it, but not so much how it feels and how people connect and what's happening. And that's very sad. And then there is this pornography, which is a disaster as an education for many young people today. I think people are gonna get lost in all this, and I feel there's a very big need for more healthy relationship with sexuality and culture in general.
So let us go back to integral theory. When we go to the 4 quadrants, it is now out of the blue. Let us brainstorm how this would be possible. So you are talking about the feelings. How does it feel? And so this is normally not spoken about. Sure, it's difficult to talk about feelings, but we experience them and we know that they're more or less the same. It's a question to find a vocabulary. This would be the upper left quadrant. Then you were talking about the mechanics. That would be the upper right.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's what we learn, maybe even in school. In 2 lessons, they show the pictures, blah, blah, blah. And then it happens like this with all the graphics, as detached from any feelings and emotions as possible. Okay, this is the upper right. Then the lower left, this is community.
Yeah.
Is this that we need to talk more about it?
I think we need to talk about it in another way, because it's either the Judeo-Christian tradition, where it's all spirit and body is totally detached from spirit, or it's the sex education or the pornography, which is all body exterior, but there's no interior spirit. Or the only there are some explorers in tantric yoga and stuff like that who is imported the Eastern traditions, but I think there's a need for a much wider understanding of psychologically and spiritually and bodily and relationship wise and culturally.
Sure.
And also understanding shadow in relation to sexuality.
Absolutely. So this is on the left, the culture. The culture needs to open, and we are the culture. We are forming the culture. So by talking about that today, and hopefully we can animate more people to do that more regularly, Henrik, if we find more people and maybe talk about even our own experiences, because other people learn by what we never had heard about other people's experiences. It's all behind closed doors. And oh gosh, and I'm different. Oh, something is wrong with me. So this is and then on the lower right,
This is institutions. This is society. This is education. This is
It is a big thing that these people talk about it, but as I understand and what you quote, it's quite a
small circle.
Yeah, a small circle and quite a, let's say, abstract way of talking about it.
Yes,
and it's not an
not
institution, let's say. But I know that there are some, let's say, private groups who are working in this, no?
Yeah, the main people doing this are there's a guy, Ray Stubbs in California, and Tara Long, she's sexologist and therapist in Amsterdam, and so there are a lot of workshops in Amsterdam or Holland. They have a sex surrogacy and educational institutions for this, and therapy, sex therapy institutions for this. So
we feel as society have overcome this idea, which is actually a rule. A psychotherapist has not to have anything sexual to do with their clients. So we need to have a different, let's say, law, a different structure of regulations, how this can happen. And as you say,
that would be lower right.
And we are talking about lower right.
How
that you cannot just talk to get results in sexuality when it is so hidden and so, so fear driven, let's say. And this is often with women, I know at least many women of the older generation, when the husband died, oh gosh, my mother, she would have thought I have another man. And I talked with older women and they said, oh, if I only want that this stops, I don't want, many women have never had, at least the older generations, positive experience with sexuality. So really, they wouldn't be open to learn it. But anyway, we have it in our pain body, as Eckhart Tolle says. Sexuality has to do with being raped and being, underneath, being squeezed, and trying to survive somehow this act. And and so we really need to talk about it, how we can change.
Do it healthy.
I want to bring up one thing, because my mother was very definitely raised in that old manner. And I don't know what kind of relationship she had with my father. I'm sure it wasn't all wonderful. But anyway, when she got older and was on her own for a while, she did try a relationship and rejected it almost immediately. I just could not, dare to go into that again until she became older and more senile. Then she had a boyfriend in the nursing home, and other repressions, started to drop away.
This is good. It's a liberation.
But unfortunately, it took senility before that could come out. That's the sad thing. But I'm really starting to develop a different idea about senility. It's just the natural end of one's life.
And the natural liberation, or let's say the unfortunate liberation of suppression in your life, which you couldn't get rid of. In this sense, this therapist treating sexuality, and not only psychology with which is more or less useful, as we know. I think it's a beginning. It's really a good beginning. But as we said at the beginning, how do we make sure that it's not another abuse, especially when men are the therapists for women?
Definitely. But the sex therapist he was speaking about, he had like a couple clients. Like, it was easier to make sure for couples to evolve than it was for a single client, because maybe that was his concern, that he has to stop there because it's not going to be helpful, but it's a single client, so he has to stop himself in that regard, because then it's not going to be helpful. So he had some healthy break there. So he said it was easier with couples than with singles, but
I imagine.
Yeah.
I imagine, because they have immediately the possibility to practice together. When the taboo is taken off them, and they have a permission to be more themselves and be more like, let's say, like children in a certain way, then they immediately can practice, and they don't have the additional hesitation of a foreign person.
They can play sexually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for instance.
Wonderful.
So Henrik, to talk about, we have about 10 minutes about the book. What would you recommend on that? And what is interesting? And what you said at the beginning that you had some concerns, but how would you, when the viewers want to know if they should buy it, because I see it's not cheap, what is the benefit they can get out of it?
Well, definitely that you can learn more about states, or they don't use those terms, but how you can get more in contact with the spiritual dimension of sexuality, that and discover that is one of the great gifts, and how you can discover how it's related to emotional things like fear of fear of intimacy, fear of love, and fear of death, and also the brain evolutionary thing. And knowing about the importance of touch in different aspects, and that you can also, there are some websites listed where you can get in contact with these therapists and educational systems and stuff like that. If you're interested, if you find when you read the book and you find it interesting in different ways.
It is an academic book, though, correct? Is it
yes. So maybe you have to be know some academic lingo to really be able to digest it.
Has this been helpful in your line of work, in your social work, for you?
Well, it's difficult to tell because I read it so recently. So, but just it has widened my understanding of sexuality in the broad sense, and what it is, and how we're sort of out of touch with that kind of understanding. So it helps my understanding where I am come from, and where are other people, and how much would they need to know. I mean, in my work, I can meet people with definite unhealthy sexual behavior, like young criminal offenders, but and also maybe with victims, but we never go into. We just write some. We advise them to psychologist or a special center for treatment. But all these institutions, as we talked about earlier, they're not grounded in that wider understanding of sexuality. They have this more traditional Western scientific understanding of sexuality, like it's more about maybe culture, identity, and like the postmodern identity thing, gender and preference.
More behaviorism, that they think they can teach them by behavioral by the behavior approach.
Yeah, they have the behavioral approach, but very much upper right, but they're too little understanding. None of this tantric things, because no one wants to touch spiritual or it's just woo woo.
Yeah,
Sure,
and this is, that's the other thing you wanted to talk about, and when we do another appointment about integral Christianity and spirituality altogether, no? So
Yes,
I
yes.
think it is leading into it, and we will schedule another talk maybe in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and hopefully with your camera, because before you were here and now you are disappeared. I don't know what has happened, and it's nicer to see the people instead of looking into the dark window.
Oh, but they get to see us.
They got to see us
Yes, I can see you.
When we were talking. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know why you could see me before when we
I could,
checked.
but not on the screen in the broadcast. You were not there.
All right.
Anyway, we have 5 minutes. I would like to end with a sort of a last sentence of a last will.
Our last will and testament? No.
Yeah, in regarding to sexuality, what we got out of that, and what our visions are for the future.
Oh my,
If you want to go first or last, how we prefer.
We'll let that be up to Henrik. Who wants to go first, middle, or last?
Can go first and you last.
Okay.
Would that be okay?
Sure.
Okay.
So, but can you repeat the question? What you wanted me to address on?
Something what we got out of the talk, what our takeaway is, and what our visions are in regarding this topic of sexuality, integral sexuality, as we call it, but let's say only sexuality. And maybe as a third thing, how do we think we can reach a better sexual life for everybody?
Or at least for us.
Well, I guess just to integrate this new understanding and talk about it, and that sexuality can be so much more than just the regular understanding, and how we can get more spiritual about it and not be afraid of being that. So I think we can create a culture that will blossom.
Talking with integral that will integrate the body. And
integrate it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Boy, I can get very involved in this topic because it's just my experience in the last several years now has been such a widening, such an opening to be in a relationship and to be in an integral atmosphere and practice. And so that this has become, I say this often, it has become a relationship beyond my wildest dreams. Because I could not have conceived of sexuality operating at this inclusive level, where it wasn't just the bodies, there's this intimacy, there's this growth, there's the absolute joy and light, playfulness involved, and I would wish that for everyone. Everyone deserves this kind of wonderful relationship with themselves, with another person. Well, many people, I don't know what the limitation should be on it, but so how to get there? Slowly.
I would say how to get there is by creating what we call integral relationship. In a relationship where there are no taboos, where you really have an open embrace for the other, where there are a lot of conflicts, but they are addressed and worked through, and there is trust and sincerity. And this automatically opens the way in sexuality, because I really I mean, before I met Mark, I was I thought, oh, I'm too old and all that stuff, you know, and I had hesitation, I really had. And I thought I wouldn't be able anymore to have sex and all this stuff, you know, and I really didn't want, because, you know, it was so, who knows if I'm good enough and all this shit. So if sexuality is lived inside a real trustful relationship, then it automatically evolves. And so for me, it's the most important thing to create really, really good, intimate relationships. And then the sexual intimacy develops in a way which you wouldn't expect, you know. You would even, what we are doing as a young person, you would even say, oh, this is not really exciting, is it? You know, but tastes change also with age and in every stage of development. So really embrace that. And yeah, for me, sexuality is the consequence of relationship. And for me, this is the integration. And I hope we can include more people to talk about it, and maybe we can open an open discussion forum here.
That would be wonderful.
That would be good. But on the prerogative that people behave and not begin to, you know, to bully.
Yeah, I shouldn't.
Yeah.
Keep my hands off.
Yeah, that's not a topic. Anyway, thank you very much, Henrik.
Thank you.
Meet again. And
yes.
Thank you for who is watching now and for who will watch in the future.
Yeah.
And please join us in the discussion.
Don't go away, Henrik.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you.